I mean, one quote, one gentleman I liked, he said, Brad, my fear is I'm going to go from he's the guy to who's he, right? There's a lot of psychology behind it. So I was just on a call earlier today, and she said, well, we're a family business, we're second generation, and we should have done this 20 years ago. And I said, well, it's a famous quote, Chinese quote, the best time to plant the tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Welcome to the Sock Door Podcast, where life is messy, but we always find meaning in it. Every week, we pull out the stories, the lessons, and the hidden gems. And then we ask the big question, keep it or kick it? If you're ready for real talk, brave steps forward. I'm your host, Lisa Begley, and you're listening to the Sock Door Podcast. Let's jump right in. Hello, Sock Drawer family. Hey, have you ever built something for years only to realize you never actually planned what should happen after you're gone? Just honestly, hello, Sock Drawer family. Welcome. Today, we're diving into a topic that every entrepreneur, every dreamer, every reinvention story eventually bumps into. What happens to your life's work when you're ready for a new chapter? My guest today is someone who has spent more than 35 years helping families, founders, navigate some of the hardest and most meaningful transitions of their lives. Bradley Franc is the author of The Succession Solution, the strategic guide to business transition, and a seasoned entrepreneur himself who has built 4 companies that landed a total of 9 times on the Inc. 500 list of fastest growing companies. He's been featured everywhere from Bloomberg to Sirius Radio to Forbes. But what really, you guys, stands out about his gift for taking incredible complex issues and then turning them into simple human conversations families can actually have together. Brad, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. We're so happy.
Lisa, it's a pleasure, and thank you for the very nice introduction.
You're welcome. It's definitely my pleasure to do that. Well, listen, I have a question. So there's so much I want to talk about. There's a lot packed in here, but we're going to get to it. So you've spent decades helping families through intense emotional transitions. What first pulled you into this kind of work? Can you take me back a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lisa. So it's actually, I had, I'd say, 2 jealous mistresses in my professional career.
Okay.
So one, I was a practicing lawyer, and the other one, I was an entrepreneur. And as a practicing lawyer doing a lot of estate planning, business planning for business owners, I came up with the greatest estate tax, income tax techniques, and still saw family businesses fail. And it was really troubling to me. And then at the same time, when I started my first business venture, I, along with 2 other partners, were abject failures. This is the company that made the Inc. fastest growing company 3 times. And what I did after the first year and a half of losing money, I came up with the idea of doing strategic planning. And Lisa, it was remarkable when we were disciplined enough to do strategic planning, what it did to our companies. And then I said to myself, well, what if you took strategic planning and applied it to succession planning with family businesses? And it was remarkable, the success that I had. And then I said, well, what if I took my process and wrote a book on it, kind of prove in more detail how it worked. And that's kind of how it got on a journey. I was going down 2 different paths, and I kind of married the 2.
Nice. Was there a moment, early in your career where you realized succession planning, because I know you talk about this a lot, was more about people than paperwork?
Yeah, great question. Lisa, there was a study, and I refer to it in my book. These 2 professors studied 3,000 family businesses worldwide that had net worths over $15 million. And this was 25 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And they found that 70% of all those family businesses, the net worth was gone by the second generation. And they did a study, and they said, why? It's interesting, only 15% of the time was it a tax or a legal issue. 60% of the time there was a failure was a lack of communication and trust. At least I can't trust you have that report on my desk. 25% of the time was an ill-prepared successor. So I say to business owners, 85% of the time there's a failure. It's within your control. And that was really a light bulb to me that even though I'm a former CPA, even though I'm a lawyer, it's not the technical aspects. You got to get those right, right? But it's not the technical aspects that get family business is in trouble. It's the inability to communicate things. And you said, and I appreciate that I have it in a very simple format. I tell people my process is simple, but it's not easy, right?
Yeah.
There are 6 steps to this process, but it takes work. So
Yeah.
that's why I say it's not easy.
I mean, what does that look like? What does the steps look like? If you can condense it for us, I know it's probably you don't want to get into
Yeah.
it all, but I mean, what does that look like when you're going
Yeah.
through that with families?
Yeah, and so if I can refer to a terrific book, and I created my process before, but I think it's a good example. Keith
Yeah.
Cunningham, Down the Road Less Stupid. He said strategic planning is real simple. You would first identify where you want to go, then you identify where you are, you then identify what's in your way, because if there was nothing in your way, you would be there already. You build a machine to get over it and you turn it on and see how it works, right? And so what my 6 steps are, again, I created this before I read Keith Cunningham's book.
Yeah.
My first stage is the purpose stage. Okay, what are your core values? What do you believe in, right? And what's your vision? In the Bible, it says if there is no vision, people will perish. The example I give business owners, hey, I pull up in your driveway. I say, hey, Lisa, get in. What are you going to say?
Where are we going?
Where are we going, right? So we need a vision. So we start with the purpose stage. Then the next stage is the discovery stage. I can't tell you, 90% of the time, business owners don't know what they have because they're so too busy working on their business, whether they've got a shareholders agreement, don't have a shareholders agreement, what their bylaws say. So then we do the discovery, we do a deep dive on what they've got. Then the challenge stage, I said, okay, I know where you want to go. I know where we are. The example I give is, well, I hate going to the mall. I don't know where anything is at the mall. What do I do when I go to the mall? I look for that big block when I go in and look for that little red dot, and this is where you are. And now I know how to get to the Apple store, right?
Yeah.
So the second stage is, find your red dot. The next is, okay, I know where I want to go. I know where I am. What's in my way? And Lisa, if there's one thing that I think I am different than most is I say, what are the obstacles? Ryan Holiday wrote, the obstacle is the way. Are those things that are preventing me from getting this business to that next generation, whether it's next generation of employees, family members, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then once we identify those obstacles, I say, okay, we're sitting here 3 years from today, Lisa. What has happened for you to feel good about your progress? Well, I'd like to have this happen, this happen, that happen. Because if you ask a business owner, let's do this tomorrow, they freak out, right? If you say, hey, 3 years from today, what would you like to see? Well, I'd like to have my business, my son involved or my daughter involved. I'd like to have a board of directors, whatever that may be, right? Then I
Yeah.
said, if that's what you want to do in 3 years, the next, I call that the mission stage. The next is the annual. Okay, if that's what you want to do in 3 years, what can we do in the next year to advance us ball to closer to our 3-year goals to get to our vision? We list those. And then lastly, the quarterly review stage. I don't mean to keep quoting books, but another good book is A 12-Week Year.
No, please. Yeah.
And they talk about 12 weeks is long enough to get something done, but short enough to keep our eye on the ball. So then I say, okay, what can we do over the next 90 days to move those things closer to our annual goals, closer to our 3-year goals, closer to our vision? And after 4 separate meetings throughout the year, Lisa, the success rate is over 90%. There's another quote I give in my book, planning without execution is nothing but a dream. Execution without a plan is chaos, right? But
Yeah.
when you have a plan and you execute, you can change the world. And that's what we do. We get stuff done.
I love that. You know what I love? I love that you went, people think of it forward, right? What am I going to do today? What am I going to do within a month, 90 days, first quarter, second quarter, 1 year, 5 years? It's like, it seems like they're always looking out. What I notice is that you took it back from 3 years to 1 year to the quarter to
Yeah.
90 days. Maybe that's standard in the industry. For me, I was like, that's kind of iconic in the way you think about it, it's easier to think you're not as overwhelmed for sure. So your clients specifically are business owners. Are they business owners just starting? Are they business owners looking to offload their business? Like what's the clientele?
Yeah, great question. There are business owners and family business owners. I mean, they're slightly
Okay.
different people, and
Mm-hmm.
it is at all stages. I wouldn't say it's startups. I probably don't work with startups, although I do think it's important to address succession if that CEO or whatever something happens to them from an accident standpoint, an
Yeah.
unexpected result. But it's primarily business owners that have a business that's I mean, I worked with one family business owner. He has no interest in selling. His children are young, but he wanted to develop his next level of executives, and he wanted to become less vital to the
Yeah.
organization.
Love that.
There's another study that I cite in my book where if you have a defined succession plan, the value of your company is worth 1 to 2 times the multiples
Mm,
because you're more the organization. It's more about the organization than it is about you. So lots of folks will bring me in, midway through, and then of course, and there's you don't want to wait until the end. As I tell Lisa, people, the longer you wait,
yeah.
the fewer the options you're going to have. But
Yeah.
if you start 5 to 10 years in advance of what you're thinking about exiting,
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot more flexibility. For instance, I want my son to become the CEO over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, but what if he doesn't work out? And you wait 5 years to find out he's a knucklehead and it's your daughter that should be the CEO, right?
Yeah.
That's why you want to start planning in advance.
Yeah. Love that. What pain points do you show up the most for business owners? Fear, exhaustion, family tension? What do you see generally being the biggest challenges?
Getting started.
Okay. That's
It's the
typically, yeah.
uncertainty of it all. So what happens is they go into shutdown mode, right?
Mm,
I'm afraid I'm going to upset somebody in my family. I'm afraid my employees will find out that I'm selling the company, which by the way, that's really not, most people don't want to sell their company.
yeah.
I'm afraid my customers will find out. I'm afraid my competitors will find out. I don't know how much I need to retire. I mean, all this fear, there are the family fears, there are the personal fears. I mean, one gentleman I liked, he said, Brad, my fear is I'm going to go from he's the guy to who's he, right? There's a lot of psychology behind it. So I was just on a call earlier today, and she said, well, we're a family business, we're second generation, and we should have done this 20 years ago. And I said, well, there's a famous quote, Chinese quote, the best time to plant the tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Today.
You got to get started. So,
Yeah.
it's more about that inertia that I see, but there's a lot of fear that I see that prevent people.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest misconception people have about or around planning their next chapter or handing off what they built? That's got to be hard,
Yeah.
but what do you think their misconceptions are about that?
I think if this isn't the biggest misconception, it's one of the biggest
Yeah.
misconceptions that you have to lose control of ownership
Oh,
to do succession. And I've had people argue with me. So I'll give you, for instance, Lisa, and this is just one example. I'm not suggesting this is the answer.
yeah.
So I say to a business owner, you can transfer 99% of your business to the next generation and still stay in control. Like, it's not possible. You can't do that. I said, well, yes, you can. You can create what's called voting and non-voting stock. And so I can transfer 99% of the ownership of the company, all the income, all the equity to the next generation of employees, to
Oh,
family members. And I hold on to the one share of voting stock and I'm in control. I'm in control of how much I pay, who I can hire and fire, all those things. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize it. So, they can
yeah.
start transfer if that's what they want to do. But that's a big misconception that people have to give up control for
Yeah.
succession.
That makes sense to me. And let me ask you this, kind of a more broader, bigger picture. What have you seen with businesses either being sold or passed down? in general, let's say since 2020, because I know there was a lot of upheaval in 2020, and small to big businesses came and went quickly. What have you seen as a kind of a common theme from this last 5 or so years?
Well, I'll try to be responsive, but it reminds me of one of the statistics I tell business owners. In 1958, a company on the Fortune 500 list lasted 60 years.
Huh.
By 2020, it's down to 18 years.
Mm.
What I found, it is much, much more difficult to operate and compete businesses today because of the speed of innovation.
Yeah.
And if you're not changing, you are at risk. And many seniors, older generation business owners don't want to make change because they don't want to screw anything up. And next generation is, let's change, let's change. And so the dynamic, I joke, the older generation is there to frustrate the younger generation. The younger generation is there to irritate the older generation. That's one thing what I've seen is because, look, the baby boomers are aging out. That transition is difficult because that next generation sees the world different than that older generation, and trying to bridge that gap, getting back to communication is the key. So that's one thing I have seen.
That I resonate with that so much because that's kind of my view of it as well. Now, are most of your businesses, are they just brick and mortar? Are they not no brick and mortar? Is it both? Like, what do you see?
It is the entire waterfront. From,
Okay.
I've got a technology company that has no brick and mortar to a $1 billion construction firm out in San Francisco, from a jewelry business that's a giant business to a industrial HVAC business to a medical practice to a legal practice. So it really crosses. They're all slightly different, Lisa,
Yeah.
but they all rhyme with respect to their succession. They're all very similar issues.
Okay. All right. So you would say there's a fair balance there. You've led strategic meetings, I think, for 25 years, maybe more. What patterns separate families who transition well from those who don't?
Yeah. And again, back to that research that I cited, I should have given you a script because this is a perfect question. So the
Uh,
profession, these two guys, they said, well, why did they fail? Right. And they said communication, unprepared. Then they said, okay, what about the 30% that got it right? What did they do?
yeah.
And this was the key. They developed a written plan to improve communication and to define the transfer of the business. They document that, it's as simple as they developed a plan and they talked about it, right? You don't have to follow my process, but the key is developing a plan and executing on a plan. I mean, that's what the research showed. And it wasn't just this study. There are many, many studies that I found how you can do it successfully, if that's responsive to your question.
It is, absolutely. And, I wonder, could you share, Brad, what's one small step someone could take this week to simplify the chaos around making these big decisions?
One small step, as we've been talking about,
Yeah.
is to meet with your important stakeholders, whether
Okay.
that's family members or your partners, and say, okay, we're sitting here 3, 5, 10 years from today.
Mm-hmm.
What would we like to see have happen to feel good about our progress going
Mm-hmm.
forward? Because I want this to continue. Just start the conversation. One of the quotes in my book is by Don Shula. He's an old coach for the Miami Dolphins. He said, it's the start that stops most people.
That is so true. I mean, created the drawer method, and the very first thing, acronym is decide to. Same, similar as start to. You have to make that decision. So I couldn't agree more. So many founders, just to kind of transition a little bit, they tie their identity to what they've built. You probably see this often. What identity shifts do you see when someone steps out of a leadership role that they've had for decades? You talked earlier about somebody staying in control, somebody who wants to stay in control. What about the folks that don't necessarily want to stay in control. But how do you guide them when they make that shift?
But how I
Yeah.
help guide them, I tell them that they need to go from leader to teacher, that their true success with their business at this stage in their life is for there to be a good handoff.
Hmm.
The relay race is the only race you run that you don't have to come first over the finish line, right? In order to have an effective relay race, you have to, one, have a good baton handoff, and two,
Yeah.
you got to make sure you cheer the other person. So I try to help them understand their next step is leaving a legacy, to becoming the teacher, because the person that just keeps it all themselves is doing nobody any good.
Yeah.
Except, kind of maybe their own psyche. But if they're concerned, and most business owners are concerned about their employees, about their family, they
Yeah.
want this to continue. Not continue because of their name, but continue because they've built something they don't want to lose. And so
Yeah.
again, we become more of the teacher, mentor than leader.
Yeah. And along those same lines, thank you for that, Brad. That makes total sense. For listeners, let's say who they don't own a big business, but they are entering a new chapter. How does this idea of succession apply to their lives?
Yeah, well, one of the quotes I give is, Ben Franklin once said, "The only two things certain in life are death and taxes." I'd like to add, it's death, taxes, and succession. It's going to happen
Yeah.
to every business owner, whether it's a sole proprietor or, my daughter works for Disney. Bob Iger is working on his second succession plan. The first one failed miserably.
Yeah.
And so I would suggest even the smallest person that they educate themselves.
Hmm.
This is not that hard to understand the concepts. And, I know it sounds self-serving, but I have a book. It's called The Succession Solution. Read
Yeah.
that book or get other books. And I think that will be a roadmap, not the roadmap, for them to follow to help them figure things out. But, it's going to happen whether they've got control of the situation or somebody else has control of the situation for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Brad, where can they find the book? Can they find it anywhere? And again,
Yeah, so thank you very much. They can find it on Amazon,
okay.
and it's The Succession Solution. If they
Hmm.
go to my website, which they can go to my website, they can also get it. It's thesuccessionsolution.com.
Yep.
But, really the best places and the least expensive is Amazon. And if people don't like to read, like many people don't, it's also on Audible. They can get it on Audible.
Oh, I love that. And also, you have courses that people can take. Yes?
Thank you. And so during COVID, I had created a certification course for other business advisors, which was pretty good. And then
Yep.
most recently, about a year and a half ago, I created a master class and with an outline and an assessment at the end for other business owners that have 5 years of business counsel or more, because I've been doing this for 20 years, this
Mm.
particular process. It works, and I want it to continue, and I want to help other advisors work with their clients to help, because I can't do it all. So that's my succession plan.
So good. That's good. I'd be afraid if you didn't have one. So,
Thank you.
Brad, your approach is built on trust, empowerment, objectivity, collaboration, results, and continuous learning, right? Which of those do I think, let's just say families, let's say business owners, but which of those do families struggle with the most? And why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that families, business owners, what they struggle with is starting from ground zero. They want to rush to the answer, and oftentimes they don't have the information to make an informed decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I say, hey guys, I said, if you're going to engage me, we're going to follow my process. It's so important to have an agreement on values, because most relationships, Lisa, fail because there's no shared values. Whether
Mm-hmm.
that's an employee who doesn't show up on time or come to the office because that's my value, or my spouse, I don't respect her. In any relationship, if we can come to a shared values, and this is be like, oh, what do we want to talk about? No, it's important we talk about values. And by the way, there can be family values and business values which are different, and we need to make sure we understand and the vision, because oftentimes people don't share the same vision, and it's okay to have different visions.
Yeah.
And that's where I see most people, but when we start, they really appreciate the fact that, yeah, now I get it.
It's interesting. I love that you said that because I would think, so what's a common mistake that costs families and or business owners the most emotionally? Now you mentioned, not being on, basically not being on the same page, right? And not laying out their values and their vision together in the beginning.
Right.
Do you see that pretty frequently? Yeah.
Yes, and then during the process, Lisa, it's natural. People will become self-interested and say, well, I want to do this. Okay, if that's what you want to do, are we violating our values? I guess we are violating our values, right?
Yeah.
And so we sort of bring them back. Look, we can all think differently, but we have to find a common ground to advance this company, because it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about this company's succession. And that's where I think where people make a mistake, that they don't start with common values and principles and a vision, because from there, then you can course correct. Didn't we say we wanted this? And you're telling me that? Yeah.
Yeah. So that interesting. What have you got in the succession? What have you got established as a process to help people when they're just starting out?
Yeah.
What is there a process, or is there a recommendation for a step-by-step to be able to meet in the middle and land on those values and processes?
Yeah. Well, they should certainly buy my book, right?
Yes.
But one exercise that I tell people to think about when they say, well, I got this value, I got this value, I got this value, I got this value. Like I said, well, if you got 47 values, you got no values. Then I say, okay, let's look at particular instances in your company's history where a story, if you can tell a story, of your value system. So I represent a jeweler. I love the guy. He's a wonderful person. And every employee is told the beryllium story. And like, well, what's the beryllium story, right? Yeah. Well, this woman bought I don't even know what beryllium is. She buys this piece of beryllium. They find that it's defective. It's very, very expensive. She had walked out the door. They could have done nothing. They called her up, brought her back in, took a significant loss because it was their error. And this is how they treat their customers. And that's one of their basic values. So and when we were creating our value system about, treat customers right, never forget the beryllium story. And so I would say people try to think about those events in their life. We can all remember them in a company that really demonstrate how we acted. And that's where you're going to find your core principles. That's where you're going to, and by the way, I believe once you identify those principles, you define your culture.
I love this. I'm writing these notes frantically, right? Create a value system, develop your core values early on. And what did you call it? The beryllium system. Is that in your book?
Yeah. So, no, the beryllium story is not in my book, but if you tie so the difference between, again, I want to get in the weeds, the difference between a value and a principle. A value is I value honesty. A principle is we believe in communicating the truth, right? It's more action oriented. They say, okay, well, Lisa, if you believe that, tell me a story where that happened in your company. Well, I really don't have one. Or, let me tell you the situation where we helped an employee out, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Just to give you a little backstory on why I'm frantically noting is all of our kids are about ready to start. Well, the boys in Nashville, they have started their business, and our daughter and her husband are getting ready to start a business. So all that to say, these are all great pieces of advice, especially even starting out, I think. For people who are transitioning their business, what does a healthy transition look like, and when is it done well? What would you say?
Yeah. So I think that when it's done well, it's done with a whole lot of sunlight, right? And people understand what's going, I don't have to agree with my daughter, but bet she appreciates if I ask for her advice and counsel as to what I should be doing with the business, right? And so when it's done well, and you don't have to tell everybody, right? But the important bit, when it's done well, it's done open dialogue. When it's done well, we begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey once said. And when it's done well, it's executed upon, as T-Bones Pickens said, a plan without action is nothing but a speech.
Love it. I love it. Is there anything else before we go into our fun moment of the show that you would like the listeners to know, that you would like potential clients to know? What is, I know we sent them where they can find you. Tell me more.
Yeah. So, I mean, from a succession planning standpoint, I think that, and when I speak publicly, I often title my topics on find your process, right? You don't have to follow my process, but come up with something of a process that discuss the transfer of three things. I tell people the succession is the transfer of three things. It's not your estate plan. It's not a trust. It's a transfer of three things: knowledge, management, and ownership. And so think about how you're going to transfer the knowledge of the business, the management of the business, and the ownership of the business.
Love that. KMO, knowledge, management, ownership.
I never heard it. I like that, KMO.
I'm all about the acronym. I'm all about the acronym.
I'm going to use that one. KMO.
KMO, right? KMO. I mean, I feel like it's a power punch, you know? So, okay. Well, thank you for that. We will make sure all of these links are in the show notes for people. We're going to transition over, if you're okay with it, Brad, before we go to our 60-second drawer dash, we call it. And all this is a rapid fire of questions that we just throw at you, and say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm ready to do it.
Well, listen, you've mentioned this already a couple of times. What's a book every business owner or reinvention seeker should read?
I would say Keith Cunningham, Down the Road Less Stupid.
Okay.
By the way, if you ever hear of Rich Man, Poor Man?
Yes.
He was the rich man in Kiyosaki's book.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. All right. Ready? Coffee or tea during a long day?
Oh, coffee. No question about it.
I'm right in there with you. What's something you wish people understood about you that they really don't?
I have a wonderful sense of humor, and my wife
I know
doesn't
that about
get
you
it.
already. Yeah, she looks at you like, what are you talking about?
John.
I love it. Your favorite way to unwind after a heavy day of conversations?
It's not really that exciting, but my wife and I enjoy watching all these shows like Cheers, MASH, Seinfeld. We just kick back and watch one show after another. That's my relaxation.
Oh, I love that. MASH, gosh, I haven't seen that. I don't even see that on all these streaming channels.
Yeah.
Where can you find it? We'll have to talk offline.
Yeah.
What's one word people who love you would use to describe you?
Faithful.
What's one thing younger Brad would never believe about who you became?
Such a nerd, because I
That's
never,
a good one.
I never read a book. I wasn't a good high school student. And all of a sudden I went to college, and I guess I matured, and now, I read all sorts of books all the time, and I enjoy this business. So yeah, I'm a classic nerd.
What's your favorite place you've traveled?
Australia.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Morning person? Yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
It's the people culturally are so nice. It's amazing. I really enjoyed Australia.
Oh my gosh. How long did you get to spend over there?
10 days. And when you go to Australia, you got to spend a lot of time, because we went to the Outback, we went up to the Great Barrier Reef, and went to Sydney. It was wonderful. I loved it.
Outback, not the restaurant, guys. Okay. That's amazing. 10 days. And I would think that's a long flight.
It is a very long flight, especially from Pittsburgh, where I am.
Man. All right. Morning person or night owl?
Morning person.
What song instantly lifts your mood?
Freebird.
I love that. One thing you hope people remember you for?
My friendship.
Okay, now here's one thing I always ask my guests to give our listeners. Just every episode kind of ends with a tiny dare. It's just one small action from you that our listeners can take today that starts to create momentum.
Start educating yourself on this subject. Anything, and just pick something up, because it will move them so much further ahead than if they do nothing.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Knowledge is power, y'all. All right. Brad, thank you so much for reminding us that really legacy isn't something we leave someday. It's something that we build every day in how we lead and communicate, how we prepare the people we love for what comes next.
My
and
pleasure.
For our listeners, and my dog's barking, your next chapter, it doesn't begin with when you step away from something. It begins when you step toward clarity. Thank you for listening to the Sock Drawer Podcast. And as always, your future is just one brave step away. We'll see you on the next episode. All right, Sock Drawer family, that's a wrap on today's Drawer Dump. Big thanks to our guests for sharing their story and their heart with us. Until next time. Don't forget, life's too short for mismatched socks. Retire the ones with holes, inspire the ones that still shine. See you soon.